Can you imagine giving your entire life to someone, sacrificing everything you had, only for them to leave you for dead in the middle of nowhere? That's what my own son did to me. He left me in a dense forest, miles from civilization, believing I would never find my way back. He thought he was finally rid of me, free to live the life he wanted without his burdensome mother. But he was dead wrong, and let me tell you, the look on his face when I showed up on his doorstep, alive and well, was absolutely priceless. Was I wrong for what I did next? Tell me, would you have done the same thing? Let me take you back to the beginning, to a time when I still believed in the goodness of my son, Mark. I was a single mother, always had been. Mark's father left before he was even born, and I raised him completely on my own. It wasn't easy. I worked 2, sometimes 3, jobs just to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I skipped meals so he could eat, wore worn-out clothes so he could have new ones, and put every spare penny towards his future. My dreams, my aspirations, they all took a back seat to Mark's, and I never regretted it. Not then anyway. I truly believed I was investing in a loving, grateful son who would cherish me in my old age. He was a bright kid, always got good grades, and had a charm about him that could melt anyone's heart. I swelled with pride watching him grow, believing all my sacrifices were worth it. He was my world, my entire reason for being. As he got older though, subtle changes began to emerge. He started to become more distant, spending less time at home and more time with his friends. I chalked it up to adolescence, a normal part of growing up. But then came the increasing demands. He wanted the latest gadgets, the trendiest clothes, a car that I simply couldn't afford. I tried my best to explain our financial situation, the struggles I went through, but he just seemed to tune me out, or worse, get angry. "Mom, why can't you be more like other parents?" He'd lament, "Why do we always have to struggle?" It stung deeply, but I still tried to rationalize it. Teenagers are selfish, I told myself. He'll grow out of it. He'll appreciate everything I've done for him eventually. I worked even harder, picking up extra shifts, even taking out a small loan just to get him that car he so desperately wanted for his 18th birthday. He was thrilled, for a few weeks anyway. The gratitude, if it ever truly existed, quickly faded. College came, and I dipped into my meager retirement savings to cover his tuition, books, and living expenses. He chose a prestigious, expensive university, and I, being the doting mother I was, encouraged him, convinced he was destined for greatness. He promised me he would pay me back, every single penny, once he graduated and landed his dream job. I believed him. How could I not? He was my son. Years passed. Mark graduated with honors, and indeed landed a fantastic job at a well-known tech company. He moved into a swanky apartment in the city, bought a brand new car, and started living a life of luxury I could only ever dream of. I was so proud, beaming with joy at his success. Now I thought, he'll remember all I did for him. Now he'll finally appreciate my sacrifices. But he didn't. He visited less and less. His calls became infrequent, and when he did call, it was often short, rushed, and always about him. He never asked how I was doing, never offered to help with my bills, never once mentioned paying back the money I'd spent on his education, money I desperately needed as I approached retirement. I tried to talk to him about it, gently at first. I'd mention how tough things were getting for me, how my old jobs were becoming harder to manage, and how my savings were dwindling. He'd shrug it off, say he was too busy, or suggest I find a better job, completely oblivious to the fact that I was practically working myself into the ground. The final straw came when I had a minor health scare. Nothing life-threatening, thankfully, but it required some medical attention, and naturally, some bills. I called Mark, hoping for some support, maybe even a little financial help, just until I got back on my feet. His response was cold, detached. "Mom, I'm really busy right now. Can't you just figure it out? You always do." It hit me then. A cold, hard truth. My son didn't care. Not really. He saw me as a problem, a burden, something to be dealt with rather than cherished. My heart shattered, but something else ignited within me. A spark of anger, a flicker of resolve. I wasn't going to let him treat me like this. I wasn't going to be cast aside after everything. I needed a plan, a way to make him understand the depth of his callousness, a way to show him what it felt like to be truly alone and helpless. And that's when the idea, a wild, almost insane idea, began to form in my mind. It was a Sunday, and Mark, after weeks of me practically begging, finally agreed to come visit me at my old modest house in the suburbs. He arrived looking impeccably dressed, probably annoyed at having to leave his lavish city life for a few hours. I made his favorite meal, tried to engage him in conversation, but he was distant, glued to his phone. After dinner, I brought up the idea of a mother-son bonding day. I suggested a hike, something we used to do when he was a kid, in a beautiful sprawling nature preserve not too far from my house. He hesitated, clearly not thrilled, but I pressed on, appealing to his sense of obligation, reminding him of old times. Reluctantly, he agreed. The next morning we set off. The drive was quiet, filled with the unspoken tension that had become a constant companion between us. As we entered the nature preserve, the air grew cooler, the trees taller, and the path less defined. I led him deeper and deeper into the forest, past the marked trails, into an area I knew was rarely frequented by other hikers. I pretended to be reminiscing, pointing out trees and spots where we'd picnicked years ago, all the while subtly leading him further from the main path. He complained, of course, about the mud, the insects, the lack of phone signal. He was clearly agitated, eager to get back to his comfortable life. We stopped at a clearing near a small gurgling stream. I pulled out a small picnic I'd packed, sandwiches, fruit, his favorite cookies. He barely touched it, still complaining, checking his phone every few minutes for a signal that wasn't there. I watched him, a knot of sadness and anger tightening in my chest. This was the boy I'd given everything to. This was the man who had forgotten me. So that's the situation I was in. I was sitting there, looking at my own son, who was completely engrossed in his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. In a place I'd deliberately led him to, I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. What would you have done to a son who had become so utterly ungrateful and dismissive? The sun was beginning to dip below the tree line, casting long, eerie shadows through the dense woods. I looked at Mark, then at the vast, unfamiliar forest surrounding us. This was it. This was my moment. Taking a deep breath, I stood up. "Mark," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I'm gonna go look for some berries. I saw some over there earlier. You stay here. I'll be right back." He barely looked up from his phone, grunting in acknowledgement. "Whatever, Mom. Just hurry up. It's getting dark." I turned and walked away, not towards any berries, but deeper into the woods, carefully backtracking my steps, ensuring I left no obvious trail. I walked and walked, my heart pounding, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. I imagined him, still sitting there, oblivious, perhaps for another hour or two. Then, when he finally realized I wasn't coming back, the panic would set in. He'd call out, then search, then truly understand what it felt like to be abandoned, to be utterly alone. I didn't know how long it would take him to find his way out, or if he even could without help. But I knew one thing. He wouldn't be able to just figure it out this time. It took me hours, navigating by the stars and the faint glow of the distant city lights, to find my way back to the main road. I was exhausted, bruised, and emotionally drained, but I felt a grim satisfaction. I called a taxi, went home, and waited. The night was long. I didn't sleep a wink, tossing and turning, imagining Mark's fear, his desperation. Part of me felt guilty, terrified that something genuinely awful would happen to him. But the stronger part, the part that had been hurt and ignored for so long, felt a cold, hard resolve. He needed to learn. The next morning, my phone started ringing off the hook. It was the police. Mark had managed to stumble out of the forest in the early hours of the morning, disoriented and furious, and had immediately reported me missing. I played the role of the worried mother perfectly. "Oh, thank God he's safe," I cried, feigning tears. I got separated from him. I must have gotten lost. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I just kept walking until I found the road. The police seemed to buy it, chalking it up to an unfortunate accident. They were just relieved I was safe, but Mark wasn't relieved. He was incandescent with rage. He showed up at my door a few hours later, looking disheveled, covered in scratches and mud. His expensive clothes were torn, his face pale and drawn, his eyes blazing with the fury I'd never seen before. "You did this on purpose, didn't you, Mom?" he bellowed, storming into my house. "You left me there. You wanted me to get lost, didn't you?" I met his gaze, my own eyes cold and unwavering. "Did I, Mark?" I asked softly, a slight smile playing on my lips. "Did I leave you there to fend for yourself? Or did you just assume I'd always be there, always take care of everything for you, no matter how you treated me?" He was speechless, momentarily stunned by my composure. You can't just do that," he stammered. "I could have been hurt. I could have died." "And how many times?" I replied, my voice gaining strength. "Have I felt just as lost, just as abandoned by you, Mark? How many times have you left me to figure it out on my own, after everything I gave you, after I sacrificed my entire life for yours?" The silence in the room was deafening. He stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time in years. The reality of what I was saying slowly sinking in. The entitled fury began to drain from his face, replaced by a dawning comprehension, and perhaps just a hint of fear. "I loved you, Mark," I continued, my voice breaking slightly. "More than life itself. I still do. But love isn't a one-way street. It's not a bottomless well you can just draw from without ever giving back. I needed you, and you weren't there. You never were." He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, speechless, probably for the first time in his life. He left shortly after, not with a defiant slam of the door, but with a quiet, defeated click. I didn't hear from him for a week. Then a text message. It was short. "Mom, I'm sorry. I really am." And that was the beginning. It wasn't an immediate fix, not a Hollywood ending where we suddenly hugged and everything was perfect. But the leaving, the fear, the stark reality of being alone in the wilderness. It had cracked open his carefully constructed world of self-absorption. He started calling more often, truly listening when I spoke. He came over, sometimes just to sit and talk, without his phone. He even started offering to help with bills. Tentative at first, then more consistently. He finally began to pay me back, not just financially, but emotionally. The trust is still rebuilding, slowly, painstakingly. But for the first time in a very long time, I feel like I might be getting my son back. I still sometimes wonder if I went too far. Was it a cruel and dangerous thing to do? Or was it the only way to shock him into seeing the truth? To make him understand the pain he had inflicted? I honestly don't know for sure. But I do know this. Sometimes, to truly teach someone a lesson, you have to let them experience the consequences of their own actions, even if it's a hard lesson learned in the dark, unforgiving woods. So, like this video, if you were on my side, if you think I did what I had to do, subscribe for more stories like this. And please, Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done? And do you think I was right? I'll see you all in the next story.